So Florida State continues its offensive line haul. We expected this to be a big offensive line class for Florida State, and a big piece of that, physically and figuratively, literally and figuratively, is Jaylen Early, a four-star offensive lineman from Duncanville, Texas. He's listed at 6'5", 290 pounds. He was a guy that was considering, a lot of who's who of college football powers: Oklahoma, Ohio State, and Florida State, and committed to Florida State during the summer. Has stuck with the Noles and now signs with them as well. D-Rob, we were talking off the air. Duncanville's got it's a very good program. It's a very prestigious program that does a lot of really good things on offense. When you evaluate a guy like Jaylen Early, do you take that into effect? And what have you seen when you watch him on Huddle?
There's no question, especially when evaluating offensive linemen, understanding where they came from, where they're playing, definitely plays a part into the evaluation. Most high school linemen aren't asked to do very much. The systems are not very complex, and they're essentially, if you're bigger, if you're stronger, you will win. And when I say win, I don't mean on the scoreboard. I mean, you'll win your one-on-one battles. When you get to college, obviously that changes. And the offensive line is incredibly complex. There's a lot more that goes into the protections, the blocking schemes based on the defensive front. And if you play at a high school where those themes were introduced, it will definitely help your transition to being a college player. And so as a college, recruiter and, as a guy who's evaluating, offensive linemen for their college, that becomes really, really important. And so being at a school like Duncanville, in a state like Texas where football is king, picking up a guy that plays in that would definitely, in my mind, enhance, the likelihood of us, wanting to add him to our team. And, this is a guy who I think, when you watch again, in some of these highlights, they can be deceptive in terms of, as a college coach, when you get these highlights, sometimes they're from a year, a player has developed a year since you got them. Sometimes you get, you'll see practice clips in there or scrimmage clips, and you don't know the opponents and all those things. So those things are they make it tough to evaluate, again, and as I said earlier, it makes it tough because you don't know who they're going up against. But when they're in Texas and they're at a school like Duncanville, you can tell, they're going up against some dogs on the other side. So when you watch, oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, and he's a guy that's played multiple positions. I think he's played some center, some guard, tackle. I think from a Florida State perspective, it seems like that they have targeted him as a tackle. Although you're starting to see now in college football, we see it at Florida State where guys have played multiple positions. It's not like the old days where you had the road grader at guard and the more athletic guy at tackle, whatever. It seems like they're a little bit more. But does it tell you something about his intelligence also, the fact that he has played all three of those positions?
Yeah, without question. And that's something that would excite me as a staff if I was getting a guy who did multiple things. Again, athleticism is king, which goes to the versatility thing. If you're athletic enough to play multiple positions, then you have great value in any scheme, in any system. And so finding a guy who's been coached at a high level, who's he has the size and athletic ability, and also has some versatility to him. It's definitely a guy that has a high value in terms of what they can do for your school.
We're going to bring up some film here right now. What have you seen from him when you watch him?
Yeah, the one thing that concerns me when I see him, and again, this is where you're not comparing apples to apples, is a lot of times he's stalemating. So when he makes contact, there isn't a lot of punch, and it seems like he's not moving bodies. You want to see guys on the offensive line. You want to see that they're moving bodies. That guys are not able to just stop them in their tracks. And that's the one thing that, again, like I rate this Jaylen around a 2. in terms of his ability or his rating, meaning he will definitely redshirt. It looks like there may be some strength that that needs to be added, and again with his versatility. After that year, he certainly projects as a guy who will have multiple spots that he could plug in, and who knows, he can find his way onto into a starting spot a lot sooner than the sophomore or junior year. But I'd like to see bodies get moved a lot more when I turn on his video. I see a lot of matches that are pushes. They're even at the end.
And just on that, just to wrap up on that though, you want to get to a place as a program where you are redshirting offensive linemen. Like that's desirable, right? Like where you're getting them, where they're getting in the weight room, they're getting in the nutrition program, they're getting bad weight off, getting good weight on, and they're not playing for. So when you say a guy might be a guy 2 or 3 years down the road to maybe contribute, that's not necessarily a bad thing. That's where you want to get to as a program, as opposed to just rushing guys in as true freshmen.
There's no question. I want to make sure that I do, bring that up, is that, the assessment of that in terms of getting to or redshirting a player really is something that you want to have, as a college staff. You don't want a kid coming off, 18 years old, just had prom, to be forced into a starting spot, 3 months after he just had his senior prom. That's just not a position that you want to be into as a college staff, when he has to go up against grown men who have had 4 years, 5 years, now with COVID, 6 years of nutrition plan, weight room, training, and technique work and all of that. A lot of these guys in high school, you got to understand, a lot of these guys aren't coached by the greatest coaches. A lot of their coaches are the history coach that just really likes football and watches it on TV. So if that guy's starting for you, and 3 months ago his coach was a math teacher, that's probably not the great position to be in, right? And so that, I think a lot of times as fans we forget that these guys are not professional athletes, and especially when they just get there as 18-year-olds. They have a long way to go in terms of teaching, in terms of growing, both physically, mentally, emotionally. It's a long way to go. So there's nothing wrong with the red shirt, and especially on the offensive and defensive line. There's so much strength and technique work that needs to be had, because these guys aren't coached at a very high level typically coming out of high school.
All right, that's Jaylen Early, another signee for Florida State's 22 recruiting class on the offensive line.